Today is August 10th, 2019. It is 11:35 a.m. This is Luciana Spraker representing the City of Savannah's Municipal Archives. I am interviewing Patricia Henderson for the City of Savannah's Frogtown, Yamacraw, and West Broad Street History Roundup Day project. We are conducting this interview at the Georgia State Railroad Museum. Today we'll be discussing the history of the West Broad Street area and the surrounding neighborhoods. Thank you for joining us today, Ms. Henderson.
Thank you.
Let's start by having you tell us your full name, including your middle name.
I'm Patricia Melanie Henderson.
Melanie, can you spell that?
M-E-L-L-A-N-I-S-E.
Okay. And is Henderson your maiden name or married name?
That's my full given name. I'm single.
Okay. Right. So in what neighborhoods do you want to share information with us today?
Well, I can start off by talking about Yamacraw Village. That's where I was born on August 30th, early 50s. My parents lived in Yamacraw Village at the time, Joe and Sheba L. Henderson, with my oldest sister, Sheila. There is a story about my birth in Yamacraw that's been told to me by my family. When it was time for me to be born, there was a funeral at the First Bryant Baptist Church. There were cars everywhere that I was told. But when it was time for my mom to go to the hospital, the EMS at that time could not get down the street because of the street was full of cars for the funeral. So they had to park at a distance, and I was born, and they had to, carry me from the house to the EMS on to the hospital.
Do you know what hospital they ended up taking you to?
I believe it was Georgia Infirmary at the time.
So you ended up being born at home then?
Being born at home. Mm-hmm.
What do you happen to know what your home number was at Yamacraw Village?
If I remember, I believe it was like 438 or something like that. I'm not sure of the actual address, but I believe it was in the 400 block.
Okay. Let me just confirm what you said your parents' name was. Your dad's name was Joe?
Joe.
And your mother was?
Sheba.
Sheba. S-H-E-B-A?
Yes.
Okay. And your sister was Sheila?
Sheila.
Sheila. Okay. What did your father do for a living?
My father was military, and he stayed in the military. Then he came home, then I was born. After that, he did a variety of jobs. He went to Savannah State. He got a business degrees, but he ended up working at one of the, I guess at that time it was like Union Bank, whatever. He stayed there for a while, and then he went into business for himself. And later on, he became one of the first black security guard at Georgia Ports Authority, and he stayed on that job until he retired.
When he went into business for himself, what was that business?
It was like a mom-pop variety store. He worked under one of his best friend, they called Buster White, Charles White, that owned a package shop on West Broad Street West Broad Street, and he worked there for a while.
Did your mom work, or was she at home?
My mom worked. She worked in the school system. She too had some college training, but she loved to cook. That was one of her passions. She loved to cook, and she worked in the school system as a cook until she retired and passed away.
So, how long did you live in Yamacraw Village?
Not very long. We moved out of Yamacraw Village, I believe, when I was around 2 2 years old.
So do you remember much about Yamacraw then?
I don't remember that much about Yamacraw.
And where did you move to?
After we moved out of Yamacraw, we moved to 32nd Street, West 32nd Street. And we stayed there until our home was built in College Village.
So approximately what were the years then that you were on West 32nd?
Around 4 or 5 years old. So 3-4 years.
Well, I mean like 1950, 55 to 1960, like what was the time frame that you were on 32nd Street?
From 1952 to I'm gonna say like 54.
Okay. All right, and then you moved to Carver Village?
In 1958.
58, and your parents built a house?
Yes.
Was 32nd Street, what neighborhood was that considered?
Probably at that time, Midtown.
Midtown? Okay. All right. I want to talk a little bit about Carver Village.
Carver Village is where I was raised. Had very fond memories of a childhood, friends, neighbors. It was like family taking care of family back then. We were able to go where we wanted to go, be free. You knew everyone, not only on your street, but those in the entire village, because at that time there weren't many people living there, but everyone became a strong family knit.
So do you have a connection to Frogtown?
I do.
What is that connection?
My grandmother, my mom's mother, Dora L. McGee, lived in Frogtown.
Okay. So did you visit her or live with her at some point?
I stayed with her most of the time while my parents worked.
Okay. Where do you remember what her address was?
533 West Jordan Street.
West Jordan. Okay. So since we're talking about Frogtown today, let's talk about then your grandmother and where she lived. Talk a little bit about her house.
My grandmother lived in the most unique house on Jordan Street. It was a 2-story house with red brick around it, and it really wasn't the red brick, it was more like the siding that we have today. So it was like red brick siding.
Did it have electricity and running water?
She did. She had water, she had electricity, indoor bathroom, but in her kitchen, in her main kitchen, she preferred her wood stove. So she continued to use her wood stove where she did all her cooking and her baking, and where I learned how to cook. She had water, but every now and then she would go outside to the hydrant and bring in her water in a bucket because she just wasn't used to the indoor plumbing, and she said, no, I'd rather go out and carry my water. And that's what she did.
Where did she get her wood from for the stove? Somebody bring it to her?
Yes, they had a delivery, and the delivery man would bring in wood and coal, and this is how she was able to keep warm, even though she had a heater and this type of thing in her house. She would only use it if it was necessary.
Do you think that was due to her trying to save money, or it was just what she was used to?
That was her tradition. Okay. That was because the heater did not keep her house warm like a wood burning stove would.
Did she own the home or rent it?
She rented.
Did she live there a very long time?
She lived there until she became disabled, and she moved in with us in 1968. And she died in 1969, so she was well able and strong, body-minded, and she did everything herself. She lived by herself. She took care of herself until she became disabled.
Okay, let me back up for a minute. You said she lived at 533 West Jones, right?
Charlton.
Charlton, okay. Yeah, I heard you say both streets. It was confusing. So she was not forced to move out of her home due to urban renewal.
Oh,
Then,
no.
you know, but other houses around her in the Frogtown neighborhood were demolished due to urban renewal, right? So a lot of her neighbors then left, right?
It was so funny. Most of them did, but they moved into the Carver Village area or surrounding areas. Some of them moved around West Savannah. So they kept in touch. It was like they never left one another.
So where her house was, were there several houses that were left alone, like hers?
There were a lot of row houses. There were a lot of other two-story homes. There were much homes that were left after they started tearing down. So it was like a slow process when that happened. The houses were not destroyed all at once. It took time for that to happen.
But her house is not there today, is it?
It's not there today. It's a parking lot now.
Do you know when it ended up being torn down?
Not really.
So let me think. Did she have a garden?
A very beautiful garden. She had flowers all around, especially in the backyard. She grew corn, tomatoes, okra. I even had a small garden on her side of the garden where she taught me how to plant, how to take care of the vegetables. I would go out there and water my garden while she watered her garden. I knew how to pick flowers and mix pots together and have beautiful decorations because that was her thing.
Did she keep chickens?
No.
No. Do you remember that other people in the neighborhood?
Other people had chickens and dogs and cats, and but no, she didn't have any animals.
Do you remember any of her neighbors that stick out to you as particularly memorable?
I remember her best friend, Miss Lula Howard, and her family. I remember Miss Lofton. I remember the Lawton family. I remember several other people. Miss Lily. All of them have really been a very good inspiration to me growing up because most of them were homemakers. And they taught the young girls around there how to cook, how to sew, especially sew by hand for material, take care of a garden, take care of the house, and just to be a lady. That's one thing that they taught you, that you were quiet, you sit quiet, you didn't make noise, you didn't run around. But then that was not me, because I think I was about the roughest tomboy girl around, because I learned how to climb trees, I learned how to pick strawberries and scuba knives. I followed the boys around, I played ball, but they always said, that's not being a lady, come back here.
So you were out in the streets though, playing with the other kids.
Yes.
And so what were some of the things you guys were doing? You were playing ball.
We played ball a lot, we played hopscotch, we played ping pong with the ball and the racket. We made up our own games. We made our own toys, especially if you didn't have them. By Christmas time, everybody got brand new toys. I used to bring my toys to my grandma, and we share with other children. The best thing that I had was when my grandmama made me a swing with a piece of board and the rope that she found, and we hung it on a tree. And that's when I had a lot of friends. Then we would come over and swing.
So, when you look back, and Frogtown is pretty much a lost neighborhood, it doesn't really very much exist anymore. What is your favorite memory, or what do you think people should know about Frogtown?
They should know that how neighbors got along with one another, how neighbors took care of one another and took care of the children, how they were able to come together in disasters, how they got together for fun times. Somebody on a Saturday will always cook and share food with one another. It was just like being an extended family, but just in the neighborhood.
I think everybody has repeated that word family. That's absolutely. So much has changed on West Broad Street and along we call it Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard today, but along that corridor over the years. What have you seen? Talk about some of those changes.
Oh, I have seen beautiful buildings being restored. I've seen people having their own business now, just like it used to be back then. One part of West Broad Street was like the downtown area where people from Frogtown and Yamacraw could go and do their shopping, their grocery shopping. Different businesses was there, banks, churches. So the businesses, the churches and everything sort of fell in line with the neighborhood of the people. You didn't have to go anywhere. You didn't need transportation because it was right there fulfilling the needs of everyone. And I see that today because some of the businesses just repeated itself. And they have built up beautiful hotels and condos around the MLK area. And it's almost like it was in the 1950s and 60s.
So you see it starting to come back.
It's coming back. The community and the business community are taking care of one another.
All right. Is there anything else you want to share with us that I haven't asked you about?
Well, my church is located in Frogtown.
Talk about that.
Yeah, my First Union Missionary Baptist Church. It's the red brick church. And when my two boys saw our church on TV, they said, "Oh, baby, our church." I said, "Yeah, I'm going there tomorrow." My grandmother went to that church. That's how we started there. And from my grandmother to my family.
How old is the church? How old is the congregation?
We are about 179 years old.
Wow. And so even through all the changes, they've stayed in the same location?
Not really the same location. The very first church was down on East Jones Street, and then it moved from East Jones Street to where SCAD is now, across West Boundary Street. And then they moved from his Boundary Street to his present location.
What's its present location?
535 West Berrien Street. Right next to the Frogtown condos.
Okay.
And in between Garrison Elementary, which used to be houses there, which church members used to live in those row houses, and other families and businesses and mom and pop stores.
Can you name some of those businesses?
Not really, I've forgotten. We didn't. I just want to know what I said, well, let's go to the store and get a soda pop. Let's go and get a loaf of bread. And we would walk from her house around the corner to the stores. But the name of the stores I never knew.
So how do you feel about, you know, all that being gone? There's a school there now, so that's a different use. How do you feel about that?
It's pretty good. It shows progress. It shows that the neighborhood is coming back. You have a school there, so evidently you need children. You need people living in that area to support the schools. So I see it as progress.
Okay. Anything else you want to talk about?
I think that's it.
Well, I want to thank you, Ms. Henderson, for sharing your memories of Frogtown and Yamacraw with us, and just Savannah. I think that's wonderful. Thank you.
I'm glad to do it. I'm glad this is happening because we need history. We need to preserve our history. And even though different generations are coming up, they need to know where it started.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think history goes on. It doesn't die.
Never, never.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
And my daughter goes to Garrison.
It's wonderful.
Okay, let's see. All this turned off. Oh, that's us talking. You don't want to hear yourself talking. Nobody ever wants to hear it.